This next video will show you how to style your layers in your QGIS map document. You can see here that we have our 3 layers that we wish to style, and they are visible in their default symbology that you get by just adding the individual layers to the map. To style our layers, we will be using a file type called QML files, which essentially store the symbology and any other properties such as labels, so that when you load the QML file to the specific data layer, you will pull in all of the different symbology that is associated with that layer. Each layer will have a specific QML file which is pre-designed for that specific data set because it draws off of certain fields that it needs to filter down to, or certain fields that it uses to change the color or the size of a specific symbol within the data set. It is important to note that the QML files do not store the data inside the file type. They are only a means of storing symbology. So you cannot add a QML file directly into the map without previously adding in a data set. You will then need to load that QML file to the specific data set to get the pre-designed symbology. The purpose of using the QML files is to maintain a consistent symbology, not only across individual maps, but across the entire set of maps that we will be producing. By maintaining this consistent symbology, our maps will look much more professional, and they will be much more visible to the viewer of the map. These QML files will be delivered to you along with this set of videos and the associated data that you will need to complete the maps. You can see on your screen here that these are a few examples of QML files that you might be using to construct your maps. Some of these that we'll be using in this map are Health Clinics QML and Rivers and Roads QML. We also have a breakdown of village QML files based on the size of the villages within a specific chiefdom. Because many chiefdoms have a varying degree of the sizes of villages, we created 3 different sets of QML files in order to symbolize the size of the villages within different size chiefdoms. Those chiefdoms that typically have larger village sizes will use the large QML files. Those with medium-sized villages will use the medium QML files, and those with smaller sized villages will use the small QML file folder. For example, the small QML files have a range of number of households per village from 0 to 75, and I recommend using these QML files for the Makanda and Mashawa chiefdom. The medium QML files have a number of household range from 0 to 300, and I recommend using that for the chiefdoms of Mwanja Bantu, Mafuta, Maguya, Manukwa, Mumbi, and Sandwe. The last set of QML files, the large folder, has a range of number of households per village from 0 to 1,300, and I recommend using this set of QML files for Kalindawalo, Niampande, and Nizamane. Of course, these are just my recommendations, so please use the correct QML files that you believe fit the specific chiefdom village data set the best. Another benefit of using the QML files is that once you load in the specific files for the specific data set, you will no longer have to manipulate the symbology or even the look of the labels, because it has already been pre-designed, and so you will not have to manipulate anything further. let's get right into adding in our first QML file. Our first data set that we will be applying the QML file to is going to be the health clinics data set. So what you do is you right-click on health clinics, go to properties. You can go to the symbology layer, it really doesn't matter, and go to style, load style. Click on these three little dots here. That'll let you select a file. Go to where you've stored your QML files and click on Health Clinics QML. Click Open, click Load Style, and you can see that this already pre-designed Health Clinics logo, so in our case we're using a red cross with a red circle around it and a white background, is already loaded right in there. And then you can select OK. And now all of your health clinics have already been stylized and their labels have already been added as well. This is a good first example of how QML files work because the symbology for health clinics does not vary across our entire data set. It is the same, and the same goes for the labels. The labels do not vary. That you can see they're the same size and the same font across our entire data set. The next data set that we will be stylizing is the rivers and roads data set. This data set becomes a little bit more complicated in terms of the QML file because, as you can see, if I open up the attribute table, that we have rivers and roads within the same data set. So what we need to do is categorize them based on the type and then style them based on that type as well. Of course, this has already been pre-designed in the QML file, so once you load in the file, it will create that categorization and visualize it based off of how we stylize it. We will follow the same procedure as the health clinics layer, so we will go right-click on Zambia Rivers and Roads, go to Properties, go to Symbology, and click on the little Style button here. Click on Load Style, open up our File Explorer, and we want to find the Rivers and Roads QML. Click Open, click Load Style, and you can see here that the symbology type was changed to categorized, and now we have our road and footpath category combined and our streams and rivers category combined. And these are already pre-designed, so the roads are one color and the streams are a separate color. We can click OK now. And now you can see that all of the rivers and the roads have been symbolized in our QGIS map window. The last data set that we will be symbolizing is the ILRG villages layer. This data set is a little bit more complicated because we are both gradually changing the size of the dot based on the number of households in that specific village, and the dot will be a specific color based on whether they have access to a health clinic or not. Again, we'll be following the same procedure as before. Right-click on the village layer, go to Properties. On Symbology, go down to Layer Rendering and Load Style. Open your File Explorer, and we want to go to the Large Chiefdoms folder and find the Village Access to Health Clinic Large. Click on OK. Click on Load Style. And as you can see here, our symbology has changed to rule-based symbology. So we are changing the color based on the response to a specific question. And then we are changing the size based on the number of households within that specific village. Another important thing to note is if you would like to create your own QML files, it's really easy to do as well. All you need to do is go down to the layer rendering here where you loaded in your QML file, click on it and go to Save Style, and from here you'd be able to save a new QML file for whatever data set you are interested in doing it for. At this point we can select OK, and you should see that now our village layer has been stylized by color and by size, as well as having the labels been added as well. You can see that the labels have a buffer around them. I typically like to add a little bit of a buffer around labels, specifically in maps that are very busy, because you often have overlap between data sets and it makes the labels much more visible to the viewer of the map. You might be wondering why all of the village points as well as the health clinic points are very large and overlapping. And that is because we are not in our layout view yet. We are currently in our data view, but the next video, which will start with creating your new map layout, will show you how much further zoomed out this is once you have a large page view in your new project layout.